As I think back on our last 20 hours together, I'm aware that my surprise comes primarily from the gifts that you have given. I am especially aware of how much you have been willing to join me in a kind of vulnerability, of probing and opening ourselves to the present dilemmas and promises and the present possibilities. There was quite a bit of tenderness in our exchange, wasn't there? A willingness to hold open not knowing, a willingness to ask hard questions, a willingness to challenge one another. It's not my experience that in just 20 hours that much trust can get generated. It's quite clear to me that that has mostly to do with the deep work that you all are doing already. The profound listening that you do, the willingness to bring strong but open voices. So I find myself hopeful about the conversation that we've had. So the question about the future of progressive Christianity is not answerable at the moment. Indeed, I'm not even sure of what it is. That is progressive Christianity. I am, however, half in love with you all taking something like that so seriously, to dare having a name for our hopes, for new and powerful spirit, for real deep community, for cosmic and personal connections. So, you've heard really most of what I think about the present and future of Christianities as they go forward in our time. Because of the dialogue character of most of our time together, I probably will ask in a few minutes for 5 minutes of your deepest questions and surenesses about the future of Christianities in our time. And then I'll close. But I'd like to so you know about how much I trust vulnerability, queerness, democratic ritual, and spiritual practice. I made that enough times in the last 20 hours that it bear not repeating. I'm aware in one of those ancient texts that were found, and I told you a little bit about it, but we didn't treat it. It's called the Odes of Solomon. And when I think about Christianity and progressive Christianity today, I notice in the Odes of Solomon a really wonderful combination. I'm going to read you one of the odes in a minute in view of the fact that we just heard songs. These are all songs. But I want to tell you first one thing and then hold back and tell you another thing after I read. The Odes of Solomon are completely misnamed. They were found and carbon dated to the early 2nd century. The word Solomon never appears in them. In fact, we're almost sure that these 41 songs have nothing to do with Solomon. This, to me, is old hat, in that I know that almost all of the books in the New Testament and beyond were mislabeled, and that ancient authors didn't care about having titles. All of the titles of all of the books in the New Testament and beyond were given by the copyists to keep track of one another. Here's the Ode 36. I rested in the Spirit of the Lord, and she raised me up to the high place. And she caused me to stand on my feet in the high place of the Lord, before his fullness and splendor, while I was proclaiming in the preparation of his odes. She gave birth to me before the face of the Lord. And while I was the child of humanity, I was called the light, the child of God. Because I was glorified among the glorious and first among the great ones. For she made me according to the greatness of the Most High. And he renewed me according to his renewal, and anointed me from his fullness. I became one of those who are near to him, and my mouth was open like a cloud of dew, and my heart gushed forth a fountain of justice. And my access was through peace, and I was set up in the spirit of instruction. Hallelujah. So the first thing I want to ask you, really, is who was speaking? So this was talk of a she who was the Spirit of the Lord. There was talk of a he who seems to be the Lord. And then the first person I sounded like who? Let me remind you. She gave birth to me before the face of the Lord. I was called the light, the child of God. Somebody said Jesus. Yeah, I can't come up with any other answer. But what I want you to know is that this person, who is the child of God, near God, is the subject of most of the odes, but is never named. Never named. A figure from the 1st or 2nd century who was close to God, who was always singing, and never named. Almost all of the scholars say it's got to be Jesus. So isn't this interesting? A book that we've discovered recently with the wrong name, about a character who is never named, but who sounds quite close to us in our memory. I like the fact that there's no name to this character, but just intuitions of Jesus. I like the fact that the Odes of Solomon are the wrong name. I love the fact that we sort of don't know what progressive Christianity should be named. I know that the book I wrote about Christianity was wrong in so many ways in terms of what I thought was going to happen. And I know that writing it had some help for some people. This is what I think about progressive Christianity's future. Let's be careful not to give it too much of a name. Let's open ourselves to the integrity, the trust, and the possibilities that we see before a name comes to us. Let's let the song of the unnamed one be on our lips and in our hearts, so that it may be that something is in the mix for us that actually is still to come to fruition. We're sure that it's not going to be grand. We know that it might have the deep integrity of that song we just heard. So I propose that we go forward together with the authenticity, with the openness, with the trust, and the questions that were so near the surface so many times in the last day. I've already really told you my best guesses. I hope they fade or live on in different forms, so that whatever this journey is that we're on towards new church and new Christianity might have some more room to breathe, to develop, to be a place and an endeavor that we can give ourselves into. Can we take a moment or two for anyone to say a word or a phrase that comes to you as part of what our future might be? Just shout it out.
Breathing into not knowing. A community based on trust and love. Tender hope. Unsettling.
nourishing,
I rested on the Spirit of God, and she raised me up to the high place, and she caused me to stand on my feet. Thanks so much.